Welcome back to Whiskey Charlotte Podcast. Here we go. All right, guys, we got something super cool for y'all tonight. Today, whenever you're listening to this, we got my main man. I mean, you know, we got Moose from Andalusia Whiskey. He's gonna come in here and he's gonna drop some knowledge about what they're doing over there, the things that they're producing, and a little bit of his backstory and stuff like that. So I'm gonna try to do this intro and an intro type thing and see how it works. Hopefully it works out for y'all. Hopefully it works out for me. So I just wanted to come in here and tell y'all that I appreciate everything that's going on, and we're working on this, trying to make this a better and better each time we do it. So if you like what we're doing here, make sure to leave a 5-star review. Make sure to follow all the socials. You know where they are. _Whiskey Shaman. Whiskey Shaman Podcast at gmail.com. If you have any questions or concerns, or want me to do a certain topic or talk about a certain thing, or if you might want to be a guest, just let me know. We love talking about whiskey, all things whiskey, and if you're interested in that, that's something we want to help you out with. So, and I'm all about helping people learn whiskey, as you noticed in the last podcast. So, yeah, let's get right into it, and with my main man Moose. Now, a little caveat: this is the first Zoom meeting I have done. So, what you guys need to understand is you know, it could get a little sketchy. You know, I looked at the audio and stuff, and it seems like it's okay, but I'm also going to be posting this on my YouTube. You'll have video if you want to see my ugly face. We'll have video and everything like that with it. So if that's something you want to do, yeah, then go ahead and do that. But I appreciate all y'all being here and listening, and yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. All right, love y'all. Bye. Now, keep your spirits up, right? All right, guys, welcome back to the Whiskey Shaman Podcast. We got a very special guest for you tonight. We have Moose Allen from Andalusia Whiskey. He's coming in here to talk to us about what they're doing over there and what they're making, and his little story. And we'll just kind of go from there and just see where this takes us. It could be a crazy night. So anyway, let me introduce Moose. And Moose, if you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and any social media you want to plug or anything like that.
My name's Moose, head distiller at Andalusia Whiskey Company. I've been with the company since 2018, pretty much since the beginning of my first little inklings of busting knuckles and rubbing elbow grease on things with the company. I was a home distiller. Every distiller's dirty little secret. You know, not so much anymore. Just like a mechanic doesn't go home and work on his cars. I'm sure you're not itching to go home and do plumbing projects.
Absolutely not.
Other than that, man, we make single malt whiskeys. I do dabble in the brandy and rum world. I love rum, man. That's what got me into distillation in the first place. The single malt is right under that. And other than that, I just like the process of pot distillation. But rum's really what got me into this. So the fact that I get to make rum at a whiskey company is pretty freaking awesome. Our brandy program's taken off pretty great, and man, that's about the easiest type of distillation I do, and I absolutely adore it. But yeah, we're pretty well rounded. But when it comes to whiskey, it's all single malts, and you know, we run the gamut from new barrel to ultra used barrels, heavily smoked, ultra not smoked, triple distilled, double distilled. Nothing under 100 proof. My street turns into a boat ramp. We'll have to excuse the monster trucks driving back and forth.
It's all good, brother. It's all good. So yeah, what here's one of their offerings, the Andalusia triple distilled. Tell us a little bit about this triple distilled.
So that's kind of our proverbial tip of the hat to the Irish and their triple distilled whiskeys. Well, a lot of Irish whiskey is half malted, half unmalted. Ours is 100% malted whiskey or malted barley. But it is triple distilled, so it comes out a little cleaner, a little smoother, a little more refined. I guess we could say. If I know some people get that itch under the skin when they hear smooth, but it does, man. A third distillation really calms everything down, and we take pretty tight cuts on it on all sides of it. So what you're getting is a very pure essence of what is a triple distilled single malt distillate, aged in a very well used barrel in the Texas heat.
Yeah, I mean, it still has some pretty good color on it for being.
Well, it's Texas, man. I mean,
You're right. You're right.
You know, you go one state north, and everything's going to change dramatically in 1 year's wood interaction. I won't say that time goes any faster, but interaction with the wood definitely, I think, is a big thing we work with here, and it sets us apart in our Irish style whiskey a little bit from what maybe other people say folks like Tal Newer are doing out in Colorado.
Yes.
Or as they say, Colorado. I am not used to that. But they're doing awesome stuff. They're doing ultra legit Irish style whiskey. This is kind of just our Texas take on it, man. It did last year win double gold at San Francisco World Spirits competition. So we're kind of gloating about that still right now. That's pretty good time.
Not to brag, right? So what kind of barley are you using, or is it a mix?
With the triple distilled single malt, what we use is primarily just our commodity 2-row single malt. It comes from Great Western Malting. And then, of course, as with all of our whiskeys, there is some amount of Texas grain in it. Texas grain is much more expensive because it's hard to grow it out here, man. So there is some amount of dark Munich malt, Texas grown heirloom malt in the mash bill bit. It might take up 8% of the mash bill.
Okay, so
for the most part. It's our commodity malt, and the Texas malt's there for the bit of flavor it does, and the fact that if we could afford it, we would make everything out of 100% Texas malt. And one day maybe the Texas malt industry will get to where it will be an affordable option. But right now, for little dudes like us, man, as long as we can put some Texas grain in there, try our hardest, we make it in Texas, age it in Texas, bottle it, and sell it to you here in Texas. I feel like we're doing our due diligence. So it does have some amount, but it's mostly just pale 2-row commodity malt, man. Same stuff you're going to get from your brew supply or whatever. And what makes the difference is, the Texas aging, of course, and just the time and care that we put into our spirits and products. Everything's pot stilled. Right. We don't mess around with column stills. They're a little more efficient, and we've been made aware of this fact. But we like doing things the hard and dirty way. So, and we'll continue to do that forever. We're going through an expansion right now. We're getting a much larger still, but it's also a pot still, and our triple distilled program will continue as being pot stilled, triple distilled single malt, as will everything else be pot stilled forever and always. Pot still purist.
Awesome. I'd love to hear that. Talk a little bit about your little, I call it a little pot still. It's not little, but in comparison to some of the big boys, talk about the pot still a little bit. If you ever go to the distillery in Blanco, you'll be able to see it. It's right there in the bay door. They open it up and you can go take a look at it. Talk a little bit about it so we can kind of understand it.
Cool. So our pot still was hand built by a fella named Von Wilson out in Alma, Arkansas. I think I'm saying that correctly. It may be Alma. I'm pretty sure it's Alma. I know some folks from Arkansas. And he is a fourth generation cannon and still builder, as I understand it, and the first legal one also, as I understand it. Pretty cool though, man. He does a lot for the home distillation crowd, builds small handmade pot stills.
Oh wow.
And they are very much shaped just like ours. So the pot still we have at work is a Missouri style pot still. It's kind of got a diamond shape to the hat, as opposed to a big smooth round like a brandy onion helmet. A little more angular, and I don't know if that was out of necessity or design. Either way, it's worked out really well for us for the last 6.5 going on 7 years.
Absolutely.
It's got a 250-gallon working capacity.
Oh wow.
Don't try to overfill it. It will overflow. I've done it once or twice. It does make a mess. It's electric powered. It's got a pretty small condenser, shotgun style condenser on it. We've recently changed that up and went to a more efficient style condenser that we actually got from we'll say an herbal purification company.
Okay.
You know, out of Colorado. So,
Oh,
you know, use your own deduction for that.
got it.
But you know, it's all lab equipment that's made for cannabis distillates and whatnot. And we were having some problems with our handmade condenser, switched up to a little bit better efficiency condenser, which has knocked our production up a little bit and made it a lot easier on cuts and stuff. So it's a very, very basic still, and you know, not a whole lot above what a moonshiner or a home distiller would have, other than the fact that that's 250 gallons and not 20 gallons or 50 gallons,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
But other than that, man, if you look up Colonel Von Wilson on the interwebs and check out his stills, I mean, they go from 12 gallons all the way up to 250 gallons, and there's a variety of hats. We use that one single diamond shape hat, and we've been very successful at running rums out of it, agricole and blackstrap style rums.
Right.
We're very successful at our brandy game, and I'd like to say that the single malt game speaks for itself coming out of that diamond shaped hat.
Absolutely. One of the other products that y'all make now, this is a special bottling because I'm special, but is Revenant Oak, and it is a peated single malt. And one of the cool things that they have over there is they have a smoke shed. And so kind of talk us through that smoke shed and what came of that. Like, what was that, out of necessity or out of want, or how was that?
Yeah, we'll call it a little bit of both, maybe, you know. As all of us are lovers of barbecue, being from Texas, most of us from North Texas, some of us from Central Texas, all a lover of barbecue, smoked meats, and just anything smoking in a big box at any time, no matter what it is. Jerky, you know, yeah, it's all good times.
Yeah.
Smoked grain can be a little spotty and rangy from time to time. Just because you get one awesome bag of smoked grain from said supplier doesn't mean the next one will have the same amount of smoke content or the same flavor profiles. So with us smoking our own grain, we kind of get to pick and choose that. You know, all of us are pretty well rounded on running a smoker and cooking a rack of ribs, a brisket, or pork butt. And we figured, you know, we can do this with our own grain as opposed to buying peated grain or hardwood smoked grain in the case of Striker.
Right.
And so with Revenant Oak, man, for the last several years, at least probably 4 years, we've been using Irish peat. They sell to Irish expats. left home and want a smell of home during the holidays whenever you're putting a fire in the fireplace. And you can just go on to a couple different Irish food stores. Uh, Ours has a store on Amazon. It works pretty well. So I like to tell people it's Amazonian Pete. It is not, it's Irish. Um, but really, we messed around a little bit with it and found, we're getting the same flavor profiles that we love in things like Lagavulin and Lafroig and Ardbeg, all these fun, savory, meaty, porky, and then on the crazy phenolic iodine and road tar end of it. And we're getting this with just these little briquettes that we're buying. So we start smoking our own grain like that. Recently this year, we collectively have made I think fully made, don't take my word on this, but fully made the collective decision to change to American Peat. We are American single malt.
Right.
So why not use American Peat? So I did several batches of peated malt this year that I smoked with American Peat out of a bog from North Dakota.
Okay.
And very Lafroy ultra porky, deep savory smoke as opposed to phenolic bright iodine medicinal smoke.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what we want to lean into. So the Revenant Oak game, it's one of those evolving things for us.
Right.
We're still trying to find where it belongs. I think a lot of people are afraid of the word peat. They equate that with that crazy bottle of whiskey that they got into in their grandpa's liquor cabinet when they were little, or that
Yeah.
funky batch of whiskey they stole out of their parents' liquor cabinet when they were 17,
Yep.
and then tried to mix it with a Coke or whatever the deal was. And I think it kind of shies people away. But there's people like me, there's people like you, there's people like a lot of people that are going to watch this that they're going to be Pete heads. So
Yeah.
I think ultimately, if it were up to me solely, I would push it in to be a much more heavily peated kind of seasonal release,
Right.
and just concentrate on that. But as it is right now, it's kind of a moderate to lightly peated kind of Highland style malt whiskey.
Yeah. And
But made
the good thing is the one that I have is at cast strength, and I think this one was finished. I don't remember. It was barrel number 511 that you had at the distillery. I don't remember.
Was it a fill your own bottle?
Yeah, it was 511. I don't remember
Okay.
which one. It was 4/15/22 is when we filled it.
I want to say that was rum finished.
Okay, well, it's amazing whatever it is. I didn't write it down, of course, because I'm dumb. But it's amazing. But it's rolling at 120 proof. So that like I've said this in the past, the higher you go in proof, the peat seems to amp up a little bit more. So yeah, it's this one is really excellent. And then they also have Striker. What happened? They have Striker, which is smoked with oak and what all is it smoked with?
Oak, applewood, and mesquite. So pretty much everything you're gonna throw in a barbecue pit to get your full rounded smoke profile on a rack of ribs or pork butter or brisket. Just your traditional barbecue woods. All of our oak and mesquite is locally sourced there off the ranch that the distillery is on. And the applewood, man, we're in Central Texas and apples don't grow around us. So if you go to Home Depot, they do sell big bags of applewood, and you can buy that, and it works. So that's what we do for our applewood. I will say that when there's local peach wood and the local orchards are trimming trees and I've got dead peach wood to use, I will revert to that, and I will use 100% local woods, fruit and hardwood.
Okay.
But man, they only trim those trees once a year, and there's only so much peach wood to be had. So
Yeah,
a lot of the times it gets stuck down to the old, whatever they're selling at Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot, man.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And one thing we didn't even talk about, you're when you do any bottlings, they are no less than 50% alcohol. So and the reason y'all do that is to keep the proof kind of at a higher level to where you can add water if you need to. If you want to put it in a cocktail, you can. And it just kind of it makes it a lot easier to work with than if you put it at the baseline 40 proof. You add something to it, it's it waters it down way too much. So but yeah, no, this Revenant oak, especially, of course, being a Pete head myself, it speaks to my heart. But you guys are like you were saying earlier, you're doing rum and brandy, and I know we're whiskey. We're talking about whiskeys, but I've tried some of the rum and some of the brandy, and let's just say I might be a convert on that as well. So talk a little bit about the rum. I know you just had a agricole bottled in bond rum. Talk about that.
Yes. So I'm pretty sure without a doubt that it was the first bottled in bond rum put out as a bottled in bond rum in Texas. There's not many in the nation, maybe 6 or 7, as much as I can find in my digging on the internet before my ADD takes over and I start looking at kitty cat videos and raccoon videos and silly stuff like that. But there's not a whole lot of it being done, and generally we release our rums at what the US considers Navy strength. Globally, from my research, Navy strength means anywhere from 54.5% alcohol to 57%. Me being the crazy bastard I am, I always like things at the most extreme levels, so I just went to 57% alcohol. So most of my rums that come out wherever will come out will be at 57%. We had a really fun but also terrifying and extremely frustrating project take place about 4 years ago. We went down to the valley, the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, right on the border of Mexico, and got a couple trailer loads of sugarcane grown right behind a church, and had it blessed by the local priest there on the church, and brought it back to Blanco, pressed it. Now I believe it was early to mid-March, and we had a crazy overnight freeze that kind of split the whole trailer load of cane. Got some natural yeast and bacterial we won't call it infection, but definitely a little bit of assistance, maybe. Which nowhere else they're gonna call that a bad thing. The Jamaicans love that, and so what we ended up with was a pretty small yield, about 23 gallons after all was said and done with, of 100% Texas cane, 100% Texas rain, agricole style rum, crushed, fermented, distilled, bottled right here in Texas, out of American used oak, that was originally one of our first bottled in bond batch of single malt. Yeah, man, and it was one of those things as a new distiller coming into the industry and coming from the background of home distillation and putting chunks of wood in mason jars.
Right.
And waiting for like a month and being like, oh, this is fantabulous. And then having to wait 4 years to watch a 25-gallon barrel come to fruition. It was a test of patience, and but it came around, and it had its ebbs and flows, and
I'm sure
it got weird at times. I was like, oh man. And then it got really awesome at times. They're like, should we dump it? Oh, we're so close to 4 years. And it actually took a little bit longer than 4 years for it to come back around. So it's a little older than 4 years, but it was something that meant a lot to us. It is not a cheap bottle of rum, but I think it's worth every penny, man. It's a testament to our dedication to the craft and just what it takes to be a craft distiller in our times, in our state, especially dealing with the let's say 12 to 17% angel share we have a year. It's pretty substantial. So to keep a small barrel of rum around for 4 years and have it come out as nice as it did, and that I believe was our first go round with rum, and we did really well with it. In my personal opinion, it just it was fun and it spoke to me. So I used to be a low voltage electrician, and I was coming home from out of town one day off a week and a half, 2 weeks on the road, and they called me over and like, hey, you want to stop in on your way home, crush some sugar cane with us, maybe clean some stuff up, take trash out. That's how you get into vocations when you have no prior experience. Wink, wink, folks, all you that are trying to get into this.
Absolutely. AKA,
make yourself an asset, make yourself usable.
Yep.
But I came in, I crushed cane, I stripped cane, I threw cane in the trash, we cut straps, we were doing everything. And it took about 2 weeks to crush all this cane. We completely wore out a cane juicer. Wow. Stripped all the gears off of it. We had to go at it. So we're pretty proud of it. And I think it's going to be a world apart from any other agricole style rum you're going to try, let alone a Texas rum. A lot of rums are mostly blackstrap molasses or just molasses based in general, maybe light molasses. And we definitely took the hard route, like we do with all of our things. Pot stills, small pot stills, slow fermentations. We try and do it like they used to without cutting corners.
That is so true. I mean, I talking to the crew now, but I in a past episode that I did, I talked about when I went up there and helped you guys out, and you were running back and forth like a crazy person. You were full on distilling, making rum wash. Everything was going on. Like it was an awesome time for me just to see the back end of it. But yeah, there's no shortcuts in doing what you guys are doing. They're out there busting their ass every day to bring this product to you. And I can't tell you enough how much, I mean, I'm obviously a fanboy, but, and the brandy just kind of came out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden you're like competing with Iron Root for brandy. What's going on with that?
Well, the brandy program kind of came out of necessity and just really good timing, and also kind of out of the whole mentality that Texas has as craft distillers in general, where we are all here to help each other. We fight for shelf space at the liquor store, but when it comes down to it, you got a problem about fermentation, you can call Joe over at Joe Schmo's distillery and say, hey man, I've got this crazy issue, have you ever run into this? And Joe will be super helpful with you. Or you might call Old Moose at Andalusia and be like, hey man, I'm running into this weird stuff with rum and it's produced this awful flavor and I don't know what it is. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, tell me how you did it because I want that. But we're all I think as a community, and I'm speaking for everybody loosely, in the mindset that a rising tide is going to float all ships. So we help everybody. And at some point early on in the wine industry in the hill country, there were a lot of people opening up small tasting rooms and wineries that weren't crushing their own fruit. They weren't making their own wine, and they were importing Napa stuff, which I'm not talking down on Napa wine. I mean,
right,
there's a reason, just like MGP, that everybody buys that stuff and wants to slap their stickers on it.
Right.
So there was this whole growing industry of small startups that were looking for Texas grown fruit, Texas processed fruit, Texas fermented wines that were ultra legit. And we teamed up with Doug Lewis of Lewis Wines out in Johnson City, Texas. And we've also recently worked with a couple other wineries. And he kind of, once that market got saturated for them kind of supplying real Texas wines to all these startups, and they started making their own wine, what you ended up with is a bunch of totes and cases of bottles of wines that were meant to be labeled under somebody else's name and never got sold. And so, in the vein of keeping them from going to vinegar or spoiling or whatever's going to happen, any sort of bacterial infection, usually, in the wine world, we'll say vinegar's what's going to take over the quickest. It gets super acidic and unusable. We'll take this quote unusable wine that the winery has, we'll turn it into grape distillate or brandy or an eau de vie, and we'll double distill it, and we'll split the distillate half and half with the winery. And so at this point, they've gotten rid of a bunch of stuff that's taken up storage places, things that are not shelf stable, maybe things that they just can't get rid of. We've turned it into a usable high proof pot still distillate that then they can use very small increments of to fortify, let's say, a dessert wine that's supposed to be like a port. And it's been a pretty successful thing. So our very first brandy project, we actually fermented out the grape juice, and it was an orange muscat, very, very high sugar volume, maybe too high for full dry fermentation, but that left a lot of residual sugars coming through. And we ended up with quite a bit of bottles of orange muscat brandy that, in my opinion, tastes very much like orange dreamsicles. It was just,
it really does.
Vanilla ice cream with an orange sherbet, coating on the outside. It was beautiful. And none of our other wines have really come to that, but we don't run a bunch of orange muscat either. A lot of the wines that we're running, which is different from what I understand to a lot of, say, French brandy makers, we're using red wine. So a lot of Texas red blends are what is going into, we'll say, the grape bill or the fruit bill for the brandy distillation. Where a lot of brandies are made out of white grapes, we're using red grapes with a lot of tannins and like full flavor and all this. So we have a little bit of a different thing going on, and especially from folks like Iron Root, who are doing amazing things with brandy. And I've been watching it for like the past 8 years, and I'm still rating Robert and Jonathan. Pour it on me. I need it. Those guys are awesome. I love them with all my heart. But there's not a lot of folks doing brandy, and I don't know why. I have found a lot of parallels between malt whiskey and brandy, and even rum and brandy, especially when you get into like the French style rums that are made with brandy making techniques. Man, there's a lot of parallels that kind of triangulate through this whole thing. And once again, pot still purist. If it comes out of a pot still traditionally, I'm gonna try to make it.
Yeah, I totally understand. So yes, so I have an original bottle of the first orange muscat wine, and to me it was at first, which I'm not a brandy. I've tried a couple of brandies, but they were like Courvoisier or whatever, and it wasn't ever really my thing. But yours was like, at first it was super floral, but then I got that orange dreamsicle, like you're saying, just overloaded it at the back end, which I don't know if it was subjectively with saying orange muscat, it tasted like orange, but anyway, yeah, no, it was a super awesome brandy, and I don't know if I got the second release that y'all have done or not. I might have. I don't remember. You know, I try to pick up everything, but it's one of those things. But so y'all are also doing, and I don't want to just talk about product. We can talk about whatever's going on. So let me ask you this. Let's go back to the beginning. What made you, other than being at the distillery, what made you want to get into distilling other than doing some home stuff? I heard something about you slapping a little bass, whatever, you know.
At least on the brewing end, in my early days of music with my very first band, my lead guitarist and singer, he and his brother had a little home brewery, and they were making beers for a local restaurant, and they had their little brewery was called Eastbound and Down. You know, and I didn't know shit about fermentation. I didn't know anything about making beer, wine, whiskey, nothing. I'm a punk rocker and I like to get jacked up, brother. You know, like, and that was where my mind was at in the early days. So I was like, well, yeah. Hell yeah, let's make some beers, man. And we made some pretty awful beer. We made some pretty great beers. I wasn't part of them. You know, and the more I researched fermentation and where I was going wrong and what could be done to avoid all the follies and downfalls that a home brewer has, off flavors, you know, slack feeling in your mouth, all sorts of things. I just sucked at making beer, man. And so the further I researched, I'm like, oh, well, we can ferment molasses and I can make rum, and I like rum way more than I like beer. So I started really just studying about rum for a long time, and that led me into the old school you know, the whole homedistiller.org
Yep.
forums back in the day, and reading all the mismatched information that comes with forums on the internet, and
Yep.
you know, trying to make rum ultra clean for a long time, and you know, having super clean fermentations and stuff, but no real flavor.
Yeah.
But it was always good rum, and it was always way better than like going to the store and buying a bottle of Bacardi. Was it way more expensive to make? Absolutely. Was it worth my time in the end? Probably not, but I did end up right where I'm at right now. So maybe so. You know, but that was kind of it. It was just experimenting with friends as a home brewer, and realizing that wasn't the avenue I wanted to take in fermentation. And then, just like every other home distiller, man, I started out with sugar washes, which are basically just flavored rums, and then moving into all grain ferments, and kind of learning at that point where I had really effed up in my beer brewing game, and kind of finalizing all that. And then my father and I had this whole delusion that we were going to start a distillery with the very tiny amount of money we had between the two of us.
Right.
And right about that time was about 2017, and Andalusia had just started opening up their doors to the public, and they hadn't even really gained notoriety yet. And I just knew that I had watched that place come up from a slab on the ground,
right,
to a standing building with open doors. And I went in there one day on a suggestion of my wife, and tried their whiskey and just kind of talked shop with them. Not so much trying to be a fanboy or anything, because I didn't really know anything about anything.
Right.
But I wanted to learn, man, and I just went in there with curiosity and an itch. And after about 2 weeks of hanging out with those dudes, real quickly realized that I don't have enough money. And so the next best option for me was well, let's sweep this floor and take out this bag of garbage that's overflowing in the bathroom. And oh, I see they're like shoveling grain out here. I'll pull my van up here and I'll shovel grain for them for a while, or whatever it takes, man. The old school approach to getting a job in a vocation you have zero experience in.
Absolutely.
And it drove me, man. I liked that they were all pot still. I liked that nothing was under 100 proof. I liked that at the time it was very much a garage operation. It was what I was trying to get into. And so it just kind of further drove me down this maniacal path of distillation that I'm on, man. It's Tommy and Ty's fault.
It definitely is. And let me just say that both Tommy and Ty, they come from a crazy background too. We can we'll have them on later, but yeah, I mean, and anytime you see Moose out in the wild, aka the Whiskey Festival, he's always got something in his backpack that he's willing to share with you that might or might not be good. Who knows? We don't know what we're gonna get into. He's all, hey, try this weird shit. Try that. But that's the thing with Andalusia, and that's why I have, I don't even know how long it's been. For me, it's been over 5 or 6 years for sure that I've been going, maybe 5, that I've been going over there and picking up bottles and hanging out. But I know one thing, they have always stayed consistent. They've always given like the profile that you want. It has changed throughout the years. So like the Revenant Oak, like he's talking about, they're changing to American Peat. I cannot wait for that American Peat stuff to come out because I want to try it next to their old stuff and kind of give a side-by-side of, okay, this is more briny, this is more iodine, this is, and like the things that they're doing are revolutionizing American single malt. And I don't think people really understand what American single malt is doing in the whole game, because everybody's like bourbon this, bourbon that, bourbon this. And I love bourbon. Don't get me wrong. I love bourbon, and I know Moose. I know you're a fanboy for Booker's. So, but the whole thing is like American single malt, like with Andalusia and Lost Lantern. They're doing some, I mean, I know they're independent bottling, but Talnua and all these other guys, I can name 100 and I'm not going to because I'm going to mess them up. But yeah, exactly. Because it's like, it gets to the point where you're like, there's so many people doing awesome stuff that we need to like point them out. And not that I don't love Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and all of those cornerstones of American whiskey. But
I'm going to interject real quick. There's a reason that all those cats are starting to put out American single malt now.
Absolutely. Claremont Street, single malt whiskey, Jim Beam. Yep.
I mean, I think Shiner and Coors are about to start doing it. It's going to be a thing, man. We've got Real Ale here in Texas producing pretty fine single malts, man.
They are.
It's a growing trend, and I think the bourbon market is kind of saturated, but there's room to grow there too. I'm not warding off any new bourbon entrepreneurs, but I think we're gonna see a reckoning in the world of whiskey when single malt becomes this new American style of whiskey that is fresh and in your face, and it's something that you have not been exposed to for all your life. Like for me, I started stealing sips of Wild Turkey 101 out of my dad's liquor cabinet.
Amen.
We're not going to talk about what age that was, but it's that age-old story, man. You were stealing nips of your dad's bourbon out of the liquor cabinet, and you always had that whiskey shiver and that old Dennis Leary, that whole that whole bit where he's talking about the whiskey face, man.
Yeah.
But as your palate grows and rediscovers things, I think a lot of people are coming off of this bourbon's the American spirit, which it is. LBJ said so, and so it be. But there's more to it, man. America's like original spirits were Applejack and rye whiskey. Which also we have done some Applejacks. I put out my first
I need to get into
Applejack this year. I'll be putting out probably one for every year for the next couple of years. I don't know, till people get tired of me. I don't know. We'll see what
We're not gonna
happens.
get tired. We're not gonna get tired. Keep
But
doing
there's a lot of native spirit to America, and there's a lot of America that grows barley, man. There's a lot of America that came up on eating barley cereals,
absolutely.
barley soups and things like that. And throughout the world, single malt means something, and it wasn't until very recently that single malt actually started to mean something in America, and we take a lot of pride in that. Guys like Westland and Westward and yeah, nameless others,
Yeah, absolutely.
have really fought to kind of make this a thing, and now we've got whether you like it or not, we've got all these big dogs jumping on the train too, which only keeps that train rolling for us. It makes us kind of the old school cats in the game. We're a small distillery. We're small potatoes when it comes to dudes like our brothers over at Balcones. But there's folks younger and smaller than us that are just now getting to their 100th barrel and stuff, but they're working hard, they're doing it right. And I think American single malt and all is just a growing trend that's it's gonna keep surprising people, and there's enough ways to do it to keep people interested. With bourbon, we have to use 51% corn, we have to be in a new barrel. All these stipulations and what we've fought for in the single malt world kind of allows us to do a whole lot more than that. If you want to make a triple distilled, a quadruple distilled single malt and put it in a 700-liter sherry cask, do it. Let's just concentrate on making good whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't even know what your question was, but there you go.
It doesn't matter. That was awesome. That was awesome. And you look at people like Todd Leopold and people like that are doing amazing things with like bringing back old stills. And then you look at Alan Bishop, who's like recreating a style of whiskey from a region of America, like
Right.
he's doing the Indiana Hoosier brandy, like nobody else is doing that because they're not from there, and they don't understand that there was 150 apple brandy distilleries in that area during Prohibition. Like they don't understand that. So it's really cool to see what the American single malt, and now it's an actual thing, the American single malt world is going to do. And I mean, as much as I love Balcones, and I'm a fanboy for Balcones, I'm a fanboy for Texas whiskey right there, but what you guys are doing, and I feel is going to be the pinnacle of what people are striving for, because like not only do you have your core lineup of these three that we mentioned, you have the Paladuro, which in my personal opinion, especially when you started adding more of that dark malt in there, like number one was awesome, number two was okay, number three, yeah. Anyway, but and then you have a bottled and bond, which I'm like, how do you even do that? You guys are such a I'm gonna say young distillery, but yet at the same time
very young.
Bottled and bond single malt whiskey, which like I didn't even know was a thing. Like, so talk about that bottled and bond issue.
Well, and nationally, I don't know the bottled and bond single malt whiskey was a thing. I know we were the first in Texas to do one. And it is part of our core lineup. It gets distributed biannually into liquor stores and on-premise accounts like bars and hotel bars and things like that, restaurants. And really, man, when it all started out, as I understand it, before I came on board, that was kind of the recipe for what was supposed to be the flagship whiskey of Andalusia.
Really?
And it kind of took 4 years for it to come around in the barrel, man.
Yeah.
And in 4 years, we were like, gosh, dang, man, this stuff is fantastic. And so we released the first one, and I guess this will be, you may have to correct me on this. This will be the third year we've released a bottled in bond. I know we've released a couple of iterations throughout those 3 years, but I think this will be the third year we've released a bottled in bond. And starting a year or two ago, I really started ramping up production on that whole mash bill and running quite a few barrels, almost as much as we're doing on Striker. It is personally, I think it's a force to be reckoned with. So people out there that aren't familiar with the two brands, Striker and Bottled in Bond from Andalusia Whiskey, they are almost the exact same mash bill minus the barbecue smoked malt. So we've got a good addition of dark chocolate malt. We've got dark Munich malt in there, sometimes some Vienna malt, and a lot of pale malt from the Pacific Northwest. And man, what we get, and it's all generally aged, all in new barrels. And it's kind of a reach out to, your typical bourbon drinker that says, I need more than one grain in my whiskey. I'm like, yeah, but do you? I mean, I like bourbon too. I love bourbon, man. That's where I come from as a whiskey drinker. And I still love bourbon, man. I love a really well crafted bourbon. My heart, and I'll say this without a doubt, in my mind, is with Iron Root for bourbon. And I love those guys, and I love what they're corn magicians.
Oh God, yes.
But there's things to be done with other grains too. And that the way we do our bottled in bond single malt whiskey, I think really crosses over and reaches across the aisle, to get that other side of the whiskey drinker that's used to a used barrel profile, or used to a new barrel profile, used to this big heavy oak tannic influence, or used to a big malty experience. And somewhere in the middle, there becomes this thing that's Andalusia Whiskey's bottled in bond, and it meets you in the middle to shake hands and give you a big warm hug, man. So it's not so malty that it's going to drive the bourbon fanboys away, and it's not so new barrel tannic and dry that it's going to drive the Sultana raisin fig profile loving crowd from the Scotch arena away from this whiskey. It's going to make them meet in the middle, man. So that was kind of the whole thing behind it. And somehow Striker took over as the flagship whiskey because, I mean, it's badass. It's what brought me there to make whiskey. Honestly, the first time I came there, I tried Striker and I was like, I want to work here. And now I do. But that being said, had the bottled in bond been around there, been 4 years old at that point, and that was the first single malt I tried from them, that would have been the one, buddy. That would have been the one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm a fan of smoky ass whiskeys and a peat head, and a fan of Texas, and so Striker struck me, no pun intended, as as just a very uniquely made Texas barbecued single malt, and that's where my heart lies. But I think with a lot of people, we have this growing want for our bottled in bond whiskey that, man, sometimes right now it's a struggle to put it on shelves at the liquor store, because 3 years ago we did not know it was going to be the hit it is today. So it's all we can do is scramble to keep up with it, and we're in the midst of a big expansion right now. So you get what you get, but it's coming out, and I think in the next year and a half, in about a year and a half, bottled in bond will be as easy to find as Striker.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I love
I'd
to,
like to say.
yeah. Yeah.
Don't quote me. Or
Yeah,
quote me, but
yeah,
Connie
I
Lyle,
know,
you
I
know.
understand. And all of this is tentative, of course, and you guys are busting your ass over there trying to get whiskey out as fast as you can. And I think this is where we're going to wrap it up. So obviously, both of us are fanboys of this whiskey, but um, Moose, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you if you want them to follow you on socials or anything like that, and then we'll wrap it up and stick around. I'll talk to you after we're done, but yeah, just let everyone know where they can find you if they want to, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. You can find us at AndalusiaWhiskey.com. You can find us in Blanco, Texas, right in between Blanco and Johnson City on 281. You can find me personally on my whiskey fishtagram. I also catch catfish for a hobby as well as make whiskey. And I am stills underscore the letter N gills, like whiskey stills and fish gills. So stills and gills on Instagram. I don't do any Facebooking or any of that jazz, but yeah, man, the best way to find me and to find out about us is come see me personally.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I thank y'all all for listening. Make sure you follow, subscribe to everything that we do, and I thank y'all. And as always, keep your spirits up.